So I'll take you through the release notes today. Just a couple of the updates. I'm pretty sure most of you would have seen some of this already, as it has been active for a week or so already. But always just to get a bit of a recap on, what are the new things, what can we activate if we need to, and then how do we utilize them as well. Always exciting to know that there's more coming as well. So obviously the remainder of the year, there's 3 more that's coming. So we'll keep you up to date on those as well. So from a session perspective, I'll take you through a couple of things, as you can see on the agenda side. So I'll take you through the API usage dashboard. I'll just read through it quickly, but you can see what it is. A new user email, self-service account recovery, the contacts in AP and AR. There's a couple of new things on the consolidation side that we can utilize, and then if you do use inventory, there's a number of utilities that they've added on there. That's quite useful. On the financial reporting side, just the versioning. I'll show you how that works as well. I'll touch on, I did one of these previously, that list enhancements on the suppliers or customers, any list that we've got. So they've done some additional changes there. Banking cloud time zone. And then on the contract side, or the construction side rather, there's quite a few things. I'll touch on one of them, but there's a few things on construction, not too relevant to the people that joined this call, so I would probably not spend too much time on that one. And then just from a payroll perspective, there's some enhancements and exciting news that came about as well. Okay, so the first one, just on that API usage. So there's a new dashboard available on the console side, so you can actually utilize that to monitor your own API usage. So if there's any custom integration or developments that you've done, this is available for you to utilize, and you can see what the number of calls is, if there were any failed calls, how we go through. So just a utility that they basically incorporated for you to then start monitoring that. Now, when you want to access that from a Sage Intacct perspective, I'll navigate through the option. I don't have any APIs on my screen, so that's a bit of a difficult one. But under the company option, if you don't have the rights, obviously it could just be a rights option. There is that API usage under usage metrics and the menu. So when you open that up, it will basically run through and it'll do the sort of calculation. It goes through the list and it'll give you the view. As you can see on mine, I don't have any integrations on this demo environment itself, but you can, filter through applications, specific companies, months and dates as well, just to monitor that, and then transactions by application and function. So easy way just to make sure, what it is that we utilized and where we're tracking for the month as well. As we proceed through, there's a couple of new options that came about. Now, when you look at the user information, there's a new email address that's specifically for user accounts. So generally, when we set up a new user, they've got the primary email address that's available. They also have the contact email address where there's primary and secondary. But this new sort of email address that they added is specifically for accounts purposes. So it's not available through the contact side of things, and only the user itself or company admins would be able to access that. So if there's ever a change required, that's where it can be updated, and that's basically utilized for any account information, any reset of passwords or user information that's shared. And there's also in future releases, they'll use that to connect additional communications to that end user as well. So just an enhancement there. And again, I mean, if you navigate through on Intacct side, it is just on that user role or user side. So if I look at my user in this instance, so that specific email address will be the account one. So you can see that primary is still there. They can differ the two, but it'll basically, once it's activated, it defaulted in the current email in there, but you've got that ability to go and change that if need be going forward. Now, in conjunction of that, when we've activated that part, obviously there's a couple of things that happened, and part of this is also there's a self-service account recovery. So generally, if you try to log in, failed logins, depending on your parameters and the setup, 2 to 3 times, 4 times in some instances, your account might be locked out, and any of those recoveries had to be, log a call or call us to assist you with that. So they've enabled that self-service account recovery now. So first thing on that one, if you look at a blank Intacct login screen, you'll get the sort of familiar instance there, you forgot your password. So you can actually trigger that, use MFA or text to get notification, or email that account that we've specified, and we can actually gain access to the account again. So that's why that additional user account or email account was specified in a sense, and that's being used in this account self-recovery as well. So just additional ways that they make life a little bit easier to make sure that you get back in if it was locked for whatever reason. When we look at contacts and what that contact visibility is all about, there's a bit of an enhancement there, as generally the default setting that you would normally have would be to see all contacts. So when you select a vendor or a customer on an invoice, for instance, you've got the ability to select which contact to select there as well. Now, when there's access to all of them, obviously there's a whole list that you will see, but you can change that setting as well. So when we look at the initial part of this, if we go into accounts payable, for instance, and we had to add the invoice in there, I select ADP in there. If I select that pay to, you can see at this point, I'll see all my contacts. So it gives you the flexibility to go back and say, you know what, I want to change this. So within the configuration, and this is an AP and AR side, you've got this new contact setting that you can update. So if I restrict that, it'll warn me that I'm changing it as well. So if I restrict that and I generate a new invoice, when we drop down, only contact related to that supplier will be displayed. So just minimizing the confusion there in a sense, or giving you the ability to filter on relevant contacts when transacting within the application. So there's a couple of options there, obviously, but you've got the ability to select what will be more appropriate for you when you set this one up. From a consolidation point of view, there's a couple of things that change. So I'll start with the domestic side first. So when we look at the domestic consolidation reporting, there's a new transaction amount column that allows drill down into the source entity. So obviously when we look at consolidation, what happens there, it takes all the transactions into that consolidation book that you report from. So drill down is not that easy or relevant. There's options to create these reports yourself, but I think it was a bit limited. But when you look at what they've enabled now, when I go into the GL and I look at my GL report, for instance, a couple of things there. So I'll run my sample data on my global consolidation entity. It's my global, and if I run that one, it'll give me the report on everything. I've got multiple companies in there on this consolidation book. I've got a few currencies involved, and you can see if you look at specific accounts in there, there's a AR account, for instance, different currencies going in there, but you can see that new transaction amount that came in there as well. So it gives you that drill down capability to say, you know what, I want to go to that specific module or transaction, and we can see we go into the details of that. So a lot more drill down options when we start that process. Now, the other side of this, that's the domestic side. So drill down is enabled. If we look at the more advanced ownership consolidation, that's obviously that percentage that was released. I think it was in the last release actually, in R4 last year. Got the ability to create that percentage ownerships now. But from a reporting point of view, there weren't any reports available. So they started the reporting side on this process as well. And you can run the custom reports that we've got, or the standard reports that we've got. But if you want to look at any additional custom reports that you want to do there, when you create that custom reports and we look at our data sort, you can now drill into our consolidated entries. So one of the option there, see it now. I've missed it now, but it is in there. consolidated entries, there it is. So there's now a data source called consolidation entries, and you can utilize that to then, interrogate the dates below that and generate any of those custom reports on that advanced consolidation as well for you to start reporting on. So quite a nice little new area that we can utilize and enable you to get into the function as well. From an inventory perspective, probably not everyone on this call that's got it, but a few things that's quite interesting there. So when you look at the utilities, they've added 3 key areas, looking at transaction definitions. So a few things on the transaction definitions. There's the GL subledger reconciliation. So, just looking at everything that's been posted on the subledger and gone to the GL, for a specific date. And then the last one is the landed cost. So a few things there that you can utilize from an inventory perspective. So when we navigate to that area from inventory side, under the setup, there's the new inventory utilities, and that's just a user permission as well. So if you've got inventory and you've got rights to it, just add that inventory utilities as part of the user rights, and you'll get visibility of this. Looking at what you've got under the utilities, there's a transaction flow graph. So how does the transaction flow? What does that transaction definition look like, and how they flow in? There's a purchase order, purchase receipt, invoice coming in, so you can look at that flow of transaction from an inventory perspective. Different groupings by GL group, by GL account, and also by transaction definition. So a few options there to export. And then from a reconciliation point of view, start and end date. So it just makes it easier to look at specific dates, a specific month, a particular product or warehouse or particular location. And we can see, just the things that we can bring through. Transactions posted to the GL, valuation by item, and then by group account, and any of the others, summary levels in there as well, running the average cost, and then looking at specific open periods by location. So a lot of options and different ways to extract data from your inventory to assist with that reconciliation back to the GL if there's any discrepancies that you need to investigate. Also on the landed cost, so if you've activated the landed cost option as part of the inventory and purchasing side, that can then be utilized in conjunction to export that reconciliation option and everything that's gone through to the GL side. So quite a neat little utilities set that they've added in there. Part of the inventory as well, I think we sort of touched on that the previous time, is just looking at that inventory dashboard and workbench. So just refer back to that one if we haven't seen that one before, but quite a nice little workbench that you can refer back to in that instance as well. The next one is really just around the financial report writer and version control. Now, looking at the report writer, obviously, when we start utilizing this and there's some change requested and made to the current version, you still have the ability to copy and duplicate the existing report, but the ability to keep version controls in place is in the event of something's changed, but we want to refer back to a prior version, look at what we had, and we might even want to restore that version as well. So a couple of things that you can do from there. Looking at the reports themselves, I've created a new version of a report just to give you an idea of what it looks like. So the report writer itself still working the same way and functionality, but under our more actions, there's now that version history that you can access. Now, looking at that, you can see, I've made some changes. So I'm on version 2, that's my current version. I can always refer back to version 1 and have a look at what we've done, run the preview, see what's different between the two. But you also have the ability, you can see there, to restore this. So if I restore this version 1 has been restored as the current version. So going back to this, looking at my version history, you can see I've got 2 views there, version 1 and 2. Version 3 is now active. That's the current one and was restored from version 1. So it'll keep that full history in there, but always have the ability to restore a prior version then as well. If you, change something that should have been changed, or someone liked the prior report more than this one, or, create a current version, duplicate that to have a new report on both sides if you want to continue to use both versions in there. So a nice option to bring that versioning control in there, and then allowing the option to run either versions or then restore prior versions as part of this one as well. Next option there, I think this one is probably something that a lot of you have already activated as part of an early adopter. So in the prior release, they introduced the banking cloud time zone. This has now been released as general availability. So for the ones that hasn't actually started that, your bank feed is basically associated to a banking zone, and we can now define that cloud time zone as well, for the specific bank accounts. So the idea there is make sure that we get the feed for the appropriate bank at the correct time. And looking at that just within our cash management module within the bank setup, you can, for each of the banks, you can decide what that time zone is. So basically just setting that up and getting that in. So that's a general way of just bringing the initial part of it in and getting that time zone associated so we can get the feed in correctly as well as part of this one. Now, the next section is really a bit more around construction. So I didn't spend too much time on this one, but perhaps just a quick overview on some of the construction enhancements. When we're looking at the billing side, they've moved that contract billing details to accounts receivable side. So any of that billing details that were invoiced through the construction side will sit on the accounts receivable invoice menu, and you can see that as well from there. Also included a number of new compliance options within the construction module, so quite important, bringing that construction details in there but making it compliant. And then one of the other key options is really looking at order entry transactions. I didn't put up slide for these, so I'll just talk to them for now. But just on this one, the order entry side, when we go through quote, order, invoice, or shipment invoice, for instance, that full order entry cycle, they've added on the construction side the ability to roll that back. So if we reverse the invoice, for instance, we've got the ability to say, because I reversed the invoice, I want to revert back and remove the shipment and reopen the order, for instance. So that whole reversal option has now been added, and part of that is also part of the roadmap looking forward to bringing that to normal order entry, not just on the construction side. So this part is currently just on the construction option, but looking at further enhancing that part, bringing that into the rest of the order entry, bringing that into the rest of the system as well. One of the other options added in there that I didn't have on my side is just looking at the fixed asset module. So most of you would have the SIG, the SIG fixed assets currently active. They have activated the first draft of the fixed asset module within the new UI. So it's within the new UI, utilizing a lot of the new technology and features that came about, and we can start utilizing that going forward. At this point, they haven't actually released a migration path from the SIG to the new fixed asset module, but that will come in one of the future releases as well. So if we ever need to get that in, obviously we want to get everyone on the latest technology. As soon as we have that transition path, we can bring that across as part of this one. Now, one of the things that I mentioned previously as well is just looking at these lists and the beta versions that's available. So we do have the normal list that you're quite familiar with, but if you haven't noticed that up there, there is a beta list, and you can turn on the functionality there as well. So if we turn this on, the option that we see there, it will give you a couple of more options, and that's really part of the new UI that they're bringing in. So you see, we can filter on multiple columns at the same time. We can sort on this. You can see where that sorting is currently and make sure we want to do this. If I want to sort by vendor name, for instance, options on the settings. There's also some global options there. So, global sort options, or even column configuration, so I can decide which columns I want to include in this list view. So you can set that up and apply that new version in there. And then also, bringing in, some of you might know that sort of left view. Generally with an Intacct, you look at one record at a time. In this case, if you activate that left view, you can toggle between your suppliers in this instance from that view, and still maintain and go through any of those options. So if you have to maintain something on multiple suppliers and you don't want to go through import process, you can utilize this list view, activate that left list as well and get that in. So the rest of the functions still the same. I can create from there, and anything on the right hand side I can modify and edit at this point as well, to just complete the process there. For whatever reason, if you don't want it, you can always revert back and bring it back into that one. The good thing about this one, when we have that beta list active, you always have the ability to provide some feedback as well. So bringing feedback in, just providing feedback on enhancements, things that work. If there's something that you prefer or that's there that you don't want in there, any comments is always welcomed in those feedback options there as part of the new list that became available. One of the other things that they did add as well is just looking when you create GL accounts, you can now default in that close to account as well as part of that if you do that on the top level. So just a couple of those small enhancements that you can utilize when we get into it. Normally when we get the release out, utilize this home button there. You've got visibility of there. You can see there's a couple of things that they just highlight there as part of the release as well. I want to look at create import templates for a budget, and I'll take you through a little tutorial. So a couple of things that makes easy, but you can always refer back to the Australia release notes, and we can have a view at the specific ones. As I mentioned, for some of these, it's just adding some additional user rights. Other instances, there's things that you might need to set up and configure a little bit to get things going. But yeah, if there's anything, let us know as well going forward. Now, when we look at the sort of last section in here is really around the payroll. Now, Employment Hero has come aboard. They've registered and gone through the verification process to become a Sage Intacct Marketplace partner. And what that means is the integration is now fully supported and tested and verified by Sage. So when you move to an Employment Hero as your payroll solution, that integration is, I almost say, out the box. There's no additional cost for it. It's something that's there, that's available. And you can see what they've utilized. So, by default, these are the things that they've activated from an integration point of view. So you can see everything from Sage, the chart of accounts goes through to Employment Hero, and you can configure, the salary accounts, the super accounts, whatever you need on the Employment Hero side. But you don't have to set up the accounts. It's integrated. It's converted across. Any tax details that needs to come through comes from that employee tax on the employee expenses. And then from a dimension point of view, it's currently limited to location department classes, but obviously there's already been requests and enhancements required on this. So bringing in projects and tasks, for instance, so we can bring in that project dimension in the near future. I think the initial part there was getting the release in, getting as much people as possible going on that to make that enhancement. And then, looking at what's happening on the integration itself, obviously when we do our pay run, it creates that journal entry for us within Intacct. So seamless integration to get that through and get it created. Now, obviously, it's not always final, so we do have the ability to edit that pay run as well. So if you ever edit that pay run, because that journal is created in Intacct, we can also go and update that journal entry. So it's not a redo. It'll update that automatically and just do the process for you. So it makes it quite useful in that case. And then for whatever reason, if something went wrong on the payroll side, you can also delete that pay run and it will remove that journal entry as part of it as well. So obviously when you redo the pay run, it will recreate it. So just making that 360 integration possible. So anyone interested in looking at that new Employment Hero as a payroll solution, that you'll be able to get that integration into Intacct as part of the application as well. So quite an exciting little feature there.